is everyone doing? Hopefully well. Hopefully well. All right. So, doing the news. If you're new to the stream, if you're new to my stream, don't know what this is about. We cover software engineering news. We cover cloud. I'm pretty big in the clouds as far as the space. I deal with it a lot in my job. And so I keep up to date on that myself anyhow. And so I cover those things, but I also cover general software news that happens. We have a couple things in that space to talk about today. So there was a death in the community that I would like to cover. And just talk about some of the work they have done and then where they will be missed. Is this where Russell, is this where we come to see which famous streamers? Well, you know what? I would need to know a famous streamer that used Rust or Kubernetes. That would be the first requirement because I'm pretty sure the famous streamers don't use Kubernetes. That would be step one. But yeah, so this is just a little bit of news. We have some stuff to talk about. There's some stuff going on with the Rust community. Again, the Rust community is no end of fun little things happening, a little infighting, a little bit of drama. But we're going to talk about the clouds. We have a bit of stuff to talk about them. Kubernetes 128 is released. So we're definitely going to talk about the features released in Kubernetes 128. That we're saving that for the end. We're going to go over that. Now, I do have two fantastic videos coming out probably the end of this week, this upcoming week, like next weekend, or possibly the following week, depending on how long they take me to edit, with the release notes for 127 and 128 of Kubernetes. A lot of people, I kind of said I was stopping doing it the last video that I did, and then a lot of people commented and were like, these are really awesome and helpful and whatnot, even though they get low viewership. So I'll probably keep doing them. I'm going to streamline them a little bit though for me so that they're easier to produce. So I'm doing a few things that's going to streamline them for you all. Well, for me, I'm gonna spin it as it is for you guys, but it's for me. So hopefully it still is as useful though, and just a little bit more streamlined. Because honestly, there's so much that goes on. It takes a lot of work to like really think about what's going to be the critical thing for the community. But we'll cover a little bit of that here. Then we'll have some talks, and we do security. So I have a couple interesting things with security, especially if you want the CNAPP GOAT. If you don't know what the CNAPP GOAT is, you're going to want to stick around because I'm going to tell you what the CNAPP GOAT is. I call it the Snap GOAT. That's what I'm calling it. I don't know why S is for the C, but I don't know why we have a C that can have a sound. So I'm going to call it the Snap GOAT because that's the easiest thing to remember. And nobody's told me I'm wrong just yet. So you're going to learn about that, as well as a few little other things that have gone on in the security. And yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I have to warn you, I didn't get as many things, which I think maybe is a good thing, and maybe I'll continue to do this. I was actually super busy. My wife had a kidney stone, and I don't know if you guys ever had a kidney stone, but I haven't. But I've been told they're extremely painful. So I was a little extra busy this last week dealing with some of that. So yeah, it's a little less. Snappy Snappy Goat, a paid for certificate by any chance? It is not a paid for certificate. It's an open source project. Snap Goat. Again, it's the C in AAP. I guess it's really the Knap Goat. Well, maybe we'll call it the Knap Goat, but that's kind of difficult to say. It feels like I'm speaking German or Russian, neither of which I speak. But let's start with, a moment of silence. Chris Nova, it seems, has passed away this last week. If you guys don't know who Chris Nova is or what Chris Nova did for the community, well, the answer is that Chris Nova did a lot of things. A lot of things. Some things that I don't even. I was reading about it just earlier today, and there was some things that I didn't even know that Chris Nova Chris Nova was a part of. And one of the things that I have been watching is about this right here. So this is a project that Chris Nova worked on, Aura, which is kind of like Run C, if you know what Run C is. But I think a much better version of Run C. Yeah, I was gonna say it's really sad news. I know that we also had the creator of Vim die just a few weeks ago as well. From what I have read, it was a climbing accident, or something or like that. So an accidental thing. So, anyways, I think it's a pretty sad time for the communities because, again, Chris Nova was pretty prominent in a lot of these communities. So, yeah. Yeah. I guess we'll just take a moment of silence. I'll be looking forward to how these projects move forward in Chris Nova's absence. I'm sure that there'll be a little bit of time where stuff is a little bit chaotic. I'm sure that there'll be things that slip by and, stuff won't get done at the same pace or same route. I do give you, if you were part of these communities or use something that these communities developed, give them a little bit of grace, give them a little bit of space, and see what you can do to help. Okay, so we can jump into security, and we can either talk about the Snap Goat or Knap Goat. We'll decide as a community what we want to call it. I actually think that this tool is pretty exciting. Tool is pretty exciting. Knap Goat, the multi-cloud open source tool for deploying vulnerable by design cloud resources. So this is basically the opposite of the purpose of any other tool. The whole purpose of Knap Goat is to deploy vulnerable infrastructure for testing and for penetration testing and learning. So that's literally what it's designed to do. I think that this is a really cool tool because sometimes it's really hard to test your skills and learn and understand. So anyways, it's a cloud native application protection platform. Is a relatively new Gartner project category defined as a unified and tightly integrated set of security and compliance capabilities designed to secure and protect cloud native applications across deployment and production. Simply put, Knap. All right. So what is Knap Goat? That's what Knap is. Again, I really want to go with Snap because that's easier. Is an open source project designed to modularly provision vulnerable by design components in cloud environments, currently supporting AWS, Azure, and GCP. So it's pretty cool. I'm kind of excited about it. If you're looking to do and practice security things, yeah. So it's a C++ deployment pipeline then. Not quite. Not quite. Not quite. So I don't know. This is pretty cool. I had not actually heard of Cloud Goat before. I had looked at Cloud Foxable before, so I think these are interesting things. I know that we like to do some capture the flag, and I said that I would do a capture the flag later this year, and it's starting to get later this year, so I gotta look for one to join. Look for one to join. Yeah, we'll keep working on it. There was an article on this. I couldn't actually get how it worked because I thought that this was really interesting, but I couldn't find it anywhere but Wired, and I wasn't going to pay for Wired and then share it because I don't feel good about that. So I'm interested. Hopefully I'll find more articles on that in the future because I think a detection system is really interesting, and how that detection system works is also really interesting. How it's going to let you not bypass it. But a more interesting thing is teens hacked the Boston subway again for free rides. This was a pretty interesting hack, so you guys probably should go read about it. I thought that it was an interesting way about how they got around physical security like that. Again, a lot of security comes at the physical level. But other than that, honestly, that was all for the security. I didn't see a whole lot of other things that came up with it. Now, I know the subway thing came up at Black Hat, so it's like 2 weeks old at this point, but I don't think that I mentioned it last week, so I wanted to bring it up because, again, how they got around the security was pretty awesome. So now let's talk about the latest in Rust. The latest controversy to hit the Rust community. We all love Rust. Everybody loves Rust. We don't like the Rust Federation. We love Rust though. But Rust is one of the most prolific communities for having issues with each other. We just cannot get along, okay? And is it a derived macro? I don't even know why you attend these, Russell. I think you're more up to date on the news than I am. Yes. So I was trying to hype it up a little bit. There is SERDI, and we all love SERDI because it allows us to serialize. One of the things, Rust takes an interesting stance on things like serialization of structures. Google kind of said, hey, we're going to just support Rust or JSON in our Go structures. For better or for worse, it just kind of works in the language, and that's kind of nice. Whereas Rust, for the most part, says, hey, we're not going to put that in the standard library. They put very few things in the standard library and look for libraries to support those things. And even when they do support it in the standard library, they just use the language and make it kind of like a library anyways, which is, again, kind of nice and kind of nice, not nice at the same time. Anyways, beyond that, we all love SERDI, but SERDI had a little bit of a controversy. And I wanted to touch on a few of the points because I think some of the points are valid, some of the points aren't valid. So, yeah, yes. And some of the points are valid-ish. So, let's talk about it. What happened was, so this issue here was put in using SERDI derived without precompiled binary. Basically, what people found out or discovered is, it was like a month and a half ago, SERDI switched to precompiled binaries for SERDI derived. So basically, if you use SERDI derived, there's precompiled binaries in the crate. If you didn't know, crate.io pretty much allows you to store anything. You're not necessarily supposed to store anything, but it doesn't say that you have to have the code. So it can be a precompiled binary. Now, Fedora, we noticed that the version of Serde shipped with a precompiled binary. This is problematic for us since we cannot, under no circumstances, with this is a little bit of a funny statement, under no circumstances, with only a very few exceptions. So there are circumstances, you're saying. I think the thing is, very few circumstances would have been to redistribute precompiled binaries. Right now, the fallback I'm trying to apply for the short term is to patch serde-derived.librs to unconditionally include from source.rs, blah, blah, blah. I'm wondering, how is the GNU binary actually produced? The workspace layout in this project looks very differently from when I last looked in here. Would it be possible to recreate the binary ourselves so we can actually ship it? Or would it be possible to adapt the Serde-derived crate to fall back to the non-precompiled code path if the binary file is missing? Lots of people like. So basically, this is the big deal here. So basically, they said this fallback approach was fine. And no, when Serde-derived is being built by Cargo, the dependency graph, whether it's this or this, blah, 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 must be resolved before anything compiles. So basically, a lot of people are very upset about this. And the maintainer kind of doesn't want to do the extra work. At least that was my understanding. Now, there was two concerns that were mainly raised in this. One was a security concern. So if you look through here, people will talk about security because they'll be like, well, we don't know exactly what's in the binary, which is true. But their whole complaint was that if somebody took over the main maintainer of Serde's account, they could compile whatever they want into the binary. But my counter to this was, if they took over their Git account anyhow, then they could actually still write and push any code that they wanted to, and people don't check every code change that the maintainer made. So that argument doesn't really hold true. It doesn't feel like an honest thing. Now, it is true that you don't know if they're compiling something else outside of this code base in it. So I still push for the code, not the binary, because you don't know if they're putting in some tracking software or something like that. There appears to be no evidence of that, by the way. I'm not saying that they're doing that. I'm just saying, like, it becomes much more difficult for you to know if that is happening. So this is where, like, I disagree with it on some case, because nobody comes in here and says, oh, what was the last commit pushed, and does it do something nefarious? Not very many people do that. So the likelihood that you actually see that and actually react to that is very, very little. It's also fairly easy to hide high complicated things like that if you'd wanted to. So again, I don't think that's a good faith argument. I still think it should be the source code. I'm not saying that. I just think that yeah. Anyways, so this was the great debate. Let me know, what do you think? Because personally, I feel bad for open source contributors that do a lot of work and then get a lot of flack for it. I also wish that it would just not do precompiled binaries. For some reason, they think that it's a lot easier for them just to do it and do it that way. And maybe it is a lot easier for them. But I would wish that they would do it. At this point, I haven't seen whether they're going to change it back or not. But yeah, I would love, as last I heard, they're not going to. For those of you who want the code, I did find this just for you all. If you'd like, you can just pin it. You can pin Cargo manually to this version. This version is the last one that worked normally. So you can pin that version, and that uses just the source code. Oh, that's right. One of the things that they were saying is that if Serde-derived takes a long time to compile, And so this actually cut down on a lot of compile time for people if it's already pre-compiled. Um, that was one of the things that they were saying is he got a lot of complaints about long compile times, and one of the things he was like, yeah, I compiled it. It's pre-compiled. Done. But there are a bunch of workarounds that you can still use pre-compiled code, or you can use the code. So if that's important to you, it's 100% still possible. In this list, there's a bunch of ways to make it so that Cargo is going to compile the code and not use the pre-compiled library. So there you go. All right, let's talk about the clouds. Unless you guys have anything to say about the new Rust drama. I agree. Russell, I agree. I wish that it was a feature flag. I wish that it was a feature flag. I agree that it's a strange. The thing that I wanted to point out, and I think that some people, and I think maybe it's because of everything that happened with Mock. I feel like if Mock hadn't happened, people wouldn't have been so aggressive about it. That's at least my feeling, because people came across really aggressive to a creator who was like, yeah, this made build times faster and whatnot. And I really do think you're right, though, that the real solution is you could even do it where it uses the pre-compiled bindings, and then there's a feature flag to use the library or something like that. I don't really even care which way. I do think that you're right, though, Russell. That would be a great feature. Yep. I think that would be a great way of doing it. And you know what? Sometimes it can be hard in the moment. It can be hard in the moment where you're like, oh, people are wanting this. I made it faster. And then like a month and a half later, all of a sudden everybody's complaining. And then you're like, I made it faster. What do you want? What do you want from me? And you can be really defensive when people are kind of like coming at you like that. So I guess I would recommend to approach these things with some grace. You don't know the whole history, or maybe you don't know the whole history. And a lot of people are more apt to work with you when... Yeah. Yeah, that's the stance I took from it, Russell, is that the author had done it for good reasons, but just made an interesting decision that goes against the perceived norm of the community and didn't communicate it well to the community either. So it kind of took some people by surprise, like the Fedora person who was like, oh, unless if there's an exception, I need to have the source code, which is fine. I mean, like that, the Fedora makes those principles for a reason, and that's completely acceptable. It just kind of took them by surprise, and then yeah, everything goes like that. All right, let's talk about clouds then. You know what? The clouds were kind of quiet. We have just a few things. We have one cool thing from DigitalOcean, maybe. We have one cool thing from DigitalOcean, which doesn't usually hit our news section, but yeah. Kind of trying to step up its game in a certain interesting area. AWS announces the general purpose... Absolutely. Thank you, Russell. I think that's a really good point to make. If it's important to people, they need to step up and implement a better way for the product. Absolutely. Too often we try to force open source to be the open source we want, but really you have to think about the core people that put the blood, sweat, and tears into making the thing, the amazing thing that you love. And you love it, which is why you're going to adamantly fight for it. But sometimes you're fighting with the person who has put the blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you have to understand that. And you have to understand that maybe their vision of it doesn't always align with your vision of it. And if you're not the person putting blood, sweat, and tears into it, it hurts. It hurts. All right. General purpose Amazon EC2 M7A instances. Now, if you don't know what the A stands for, the general understanding is A stands for the AMD EPYC processors. So this is the 4th generation of AMD EPYC processors for their general purpose compute. These are workhorses of general computing machines. General compute means they usually have a pretty good balance of CPUs to memory that you can expect, and they go up to the 48x large with DDR5 memory. So you have high-speed memory on there with a lot of memory, a lot of CPUs. So 50% more higher performance than the M6As. Pretty cool stuff coming out. All right, but let's talk about the HPC 7A instances instead of these lame M7As. So these are general purpose. These are not general purpose. This is the high compute instances. So the HPC 7A instances, again, A standing for Amazon or AMD EPYC processors, are also on the 4th generation processors, but these give you up to what, 120 or 192 EPYC vCPUs. These are just monsters of machines. These are going to cost you, but they have a lot of memory, a lot of CPU. Not a ton of memory for the amount of CPUs you have, lower than some because they're all about compute. So anyways, these have been announced. They're only in a few regions, so if you're looking at them, they're only right now in a few regions. So, you know, not for everybody quite yet. Let's see. We have Ohio, Ireland, and US West in the GovCloud. So basically, Ohio and Ireland are the only places they're released right now. So that's good for me. That's good for me. I live close to Ohio. Amazon Lex. So Lex is their service for language and whatnot. Supports confirmation slot types. So basically, it's expanding on Lex to have different. Let me think about how I'm going to word this in just a second. I already went over this, how I was going to word this. Again, Lex is like ChatGPT. And you know how ChatGPT has this way of doing plugins and stuff? Confirmation slot types is a way to expand Lex to kind of have some of that functionality. So basically, you can have prompts for different confirmation that you're requesting from the user. Basically, these confirmations can prompt the user and interrupt the user. So yeah, again, it's kind of like adding a little bit of extra plugin ability. So that's pretty cool. As far as that goes, that's really all I saw for AWS. Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Redis 7 support on Memory Store. So Memory Store is Redis. It's not Redis. It is a thing that has a Redis interface. That basically means if your thing works for Redis, it kind of works for Memory Store. So they support. GCP brought out the Redis 7 interface for Memory Store. So it's a UI widget thing. Yes, Russell, 100%. It's not, slots are not an extension of knowledge. It's more of a UI widget thing. It's a way to let you interact with the end users. Okay. So proactively manage your subnet IP addresses allocated with Network Analyzer. So this comes from, I don't have 1 second. 1 second. There's an article that goes with this with a new thing that they released goes along with this. Okay. So basically, and why I have this article is this is how to leverage it. It's not really talking about the thing. So if you're in GCP, this is a much better summary of what that article is describing how to do it. So they released, you can now use Network Analyzer and Recommender API to query the IP address utilization. So what this is letting you do is understand how you're utilizing your IP addresses. So if you want to know how, if you have subnets, CIDRs that are almost full versus ones that are basically empty, this is describing how to do it. So basically they added some new features that allows you to do this together. So I think this is actually pretty cool because it's going to let you know which ones are full or oversized. I don't care as much about oversized versus the full. But anyways, you can look at that and understand your network a little bit better. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that's the blog article. So if you're on GCP and this ever comes up, they have a pretty cool blog article on how you might be able to do it. I know it says August 2nd. GCP has very bad ways of finding this information, so I'm a little behind, but I try to find it as fast as I can. We'll move quickly on to Azure. That was all that I could find for GCP. We have generally available the 40 megabytes a second, a terabyte, and 500 megabytes a second, a terabyte performance tier for Azure Managed Luster. Azure Managed Luster now offers 2 performance tiers tailored to solutions for various workload sizes. So if you use Azure Luster, bring back a little luster in your service. Azure Front Door. So Front Door is, as far as I understand, their C and D. Oh my gosh. It's the thing that we were talking about, how we were going to create content delivery. Oh, it's their WAF? I thought Azure Front Door was their WAF. 1 second. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's check this really quickly. It's their content delivery service. Content delivery network. Sorry. Well, I had to look it up because I didn't know what it was. So I'm learning Azure. I'm getting much better at Azure, but Azure is my weakest cloud by far. Okay, so basically they added standard and premium tier in Azure Government. So this is kind of hyper-focused, but basically before this, Azure Front Door wasn't available in Azure Government, and now it is. So if you have to work in Azure Government, you can now use Azure Front Door. General availability SDK type bindings in Azure Functions. So this is giving more power to you function users. So if you're deploying just on functions, you can now easily integrate event and data sources or more event and data sources that come from a much expanded range of types. And they say from the Azure SDK or .NET. I don't know 100% what events are in the Azure SDK or .NET. This is where I'm still a little bit newer. But if you're using functions and wanted an expanded range of events, I think that this could be really huge because, those events are what kind of drives your functions. And sometimes they don't have the right event. So I think this is probably my favorite thing that Azure released this week. Because I think that's actually what makes those functions really powerful is you don't have to have something that listens to a webhook or, a WebSocket, and you don't have to have those types of things. They get woken up automatically for those events. I think that's like the biggest selling thing to using a function. Anytime that I've used one, it's because it had an event that could just trigger and do the thing, which was and is fantastic. And that was pretty much it. I was looking through some of their other announcements, didn't see a whole lot, but I did see something from DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean announces second quarter results. These were underwhelming. These were not great, but these is not really what we want to talk about because we want to know why they had a bad quarter. And that was because no. So it's the availability from expanded ranges of types, such as those from the Azure SDK for .NET. So I don't know exactly what that means. That's what the Azure SDK for .NET. I'm assuming that's their Azure SDK for C#. Like they have an SDK for C#. I'm assuming that it builds on those types of events that are in there. I don't know what that means. I'm hoping that whoever's watching this, who is an Azure developer that uses Azure SDK for .NET, will know what that means. That's my hope and goal, because I don't use the Azure SDK for .NET. I don't know all the platforms. So this is what it's for. So, now the .NET function in an isolated worker process could, for example, start with a blob client passed to it. Using the type, the function can stream data incrementally and process larger blobs than it could. Some workloads may see throughput improvements. Functions authors should be aware that a binding expression relies on a trigger data, and the trigger itself cannot be one of the newly supported types. Support covers the extension for blob, queues, tables, Cosmos DB, event hubs, Event Grid, and Service Bus. Support for the Service Bus trigger does not yet cover message settlement scenarios, but the general availability update does enable the use of Service Bus received message. All right. So they had a disappointing quarter, but they have some cool news that comes from this. An advertisement. DigitalOcean set to expand AI offerings with 111 million acquisition of Paperspace. If you guys don't know what Paperspace is, Paperspace was a startup that was looking to provide hardware for machine learning and AI uses. So basically your data center for GPUs effectively. So that is what Paperspace was doing. New York Paperspace, specializing in cloud infrastructure as a service for highly scalable applications leveraging GPUs. So that's what they were buying. So they bought this. They didn't specifically state, but obviously this is for the AI arms race here. This is what they're going for. So I'm going to be interested in seeing what comes from that. All right. That was really all I could find for clouds. I checked Linode this week. Didn't see a whole lot of Linode stuff. I didn't see a whole lot of other cloud news, but we do have some stuff from Kubernetes. So for all of you Kubernetes fans or you Kubernetes haters, there's three things. There's an article that I want to just state. If you think this is you, please stop, think twice, and then think if it's for you. And then we're going to talk about the creation of the tab. Yeah, Kubernetes, the CNCF has created the tab. And we're going to talk about what that actually means. And then we're going to talk about Kubernetes 1.28. And we're just going to look over the features. We're going to click on the ones we think look interesting. And then you'll have a video coming out in a week about it. Okay, so the first article here. Istio Service Mesh hits milestones years after open source product should have. The open source Istio Service Mesh project is hitting a major milestone today as it officially graduates to a full project at the CNCF. Istio describes itself as a service mesh as a dedicated infrastructure layer that can add to your applications. Now, my argument here is that you probably don't need a service mesh, and you probably shouldn't use one. That's my argument. I have seen many teams use it's the same argument for Kubernetes. You need to understand what a service mesh is going to solve for you, who it's targeting, what companies and what problems it's solving, and more importantly, the problems it's going to add to you that you're going to have to deal with. So my argument is, don't worry about a service mesh unless if you have to. Then worry about it. Now, let's move on. That being said, I do want to shout out the Istio project has come a long ways in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, it went from completely unmanageable to hard to manage, which is an accomplishment. Istio is a lot of stuff, and it does a lot of things, a lot of powerful things. And it's come a long way, an absolute long way. So I do want to give them that shout out. I have been watching it. I have used Istio for better or for worse, and it has come quite a long ways. Announcing the CNCF End User Technical Advisory Board, or TAB for short. I think they thought CEUTAB was a little too long of an abbreviation, so they just went with Technical Advisory Board, but it's really the CNCF End User Technical Advisory Board. We are thrilled to announce a significant milestone in our ongoing commitment to the cloud native community, the formation of the CNCF End User Technical Advisory Board. The End User Tab is a pioneering initiative designed to ensure the needs and perspective of end users are adequately and effectively represented in the CNCF community discussions. This is part of our broader mission to drive the future of cloud-native technologies in a direction that benefits all stakeholders. I'm skeptical, to say the least, but I'm excited to see what they try to do or how they try to tackle this problem. Because when they talk about all stakeholders, they're talking about a lot of companies. While there is still a strong support for individual users, the largest stakeholders and the majority of stakeholders are companies by far. So I'm looking to see how they look to prioritize their stakeholders. Because my question is, are they going to prioritize companies that actually pay? Or are they going to do those individual contributors? And are they going to do right by those individual contributors? Because it's a hard problem. It's a hard problem. So they did have an end user. This is not their first attempt at this. We could do a history on their. I mean, the CNCF itself is really supposed to be an end user tab. The CNCF there is to do this exact thing. I mean, like, that is the whole thing of the CNCF, is to nurture the community and help it grow in the right path. So obviously it hasn't been working quite as they expected it to. We can talk about earlier attempts. But yes. So here are kind of the key responsibilities they've identified to undertake: providing feedback and recommendations on the state of the ecosystem from an end user perspective. I'm hoping to see the tab release specific things. I'm hoping to see the tab release like a monthly blog post with stats, or maybe quarterly blog post with stats. That's what I would like to see. Reviewing, approving, and publishing reference architectures for cloud native technologies. This is huge. This is completely lacking. I mean, I have even done some of this myself because it just doesn't exist. Serving as a conduit for communication between end user communities and other CNCF governing bodies. I think I don't particularly see this as a good one, to be honest. This is kind of saying that the KubeADM project that the end user community that uses KubeADM doesn't have its own way to understand its community. There's a lot of or a lot of CNCF projects and governing bodies. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to do this. This looks to be a difficult one. Like, how would the tab know the sub communities better? Not sure. Not sure. Identifying gaps in the CNCF projects and the cloud native ecosystem. This is an interesting one. This is an interesting one because so far what I've seen is that the CNCF ecosystem is a bunch of computer nerds. And if we see a gap, then we probably work to fill it. That's what a lot of projects from K9S, great video coming out tomorrow. From, K9S and Lens to even things like Istio and Metal LB even. The ecosystem does a pretty good job. But we'll see. Providing input to the talk on product acceptance and graduation. So this is the technical committee. I wish the first time you use an abbreviation in any official thing like this, you should spell the whole thing out. But that's what this is the tech. Oh, wait, they did. Okay, the technical oversight committee. That's what the talk is. Providing feedback to CNCF projects regarding the end user experience related to usability and reliability and performance. This is good. I'm wondering how they're going to go about doing this. Overseeing end user groups, including approving the creation of new groups. Okay. Adding visibility to end user adopters of CNCF projects. Things adding visibility, I think, is really, really great. Overseeing end user groups, I think maybe this is why I personally am not a part of these types of groups, as they want every group to be kind of their group. And I don't know. I don't know. It's a hard problem. I also see where they're coming from. They want a certain, if it's a cloud native group, they want it to be kind of a cloud native, like to be that. But there has to be some acceptance of that. There's different groups that are different than you. Yeah, I don't know. This is a hard problem. I don't know. We'll have to see how this goes. But this is the tab. So this is just being released. So we'll see how it goes. I really hope to see quarterly things. It'd be nice if they started to point out redundant overlap. Do we really need 17 different service messages, which leads to complexity? Yeah, the paralysis of choice is real in Kubernetes. And the reference art should. I think those are really good points, Russell. The paralysis of choice is really real in the cloud native ecosystem. Let's talk about logging and observability. Let's talk about it, because if you're wanting to look and actually roll your own thing, the paralysis of choice is astounding. And then you inevitably waste 2 weeks. You're not any better off after your test. And then you inevitably run into a problem that you couldn't have foreseen anyways. You either have to fix it or migrate anyhow, and it doesn't... It's rough. It's rough. It's really quite a problem. Yeah, let's talk about service mesh. That's not even a simple one. And you have Kong, you have Istio, you have... the one that I always forget that actually is kind of my favorite if you want simple service mesh, but for some reason I always think Metal LB, but it's not Metal LB. It's you know what I'm talking about. There, I just talk about 3 off the top of my head, but that's not even talking about Miash, which is spelled with a AE Greek symbol thing. There are just a ton more service meshes out there as well. There's also Console from the company that was in hot water for all their license rebranding, HashiCorp last week. So yeah, the paralysis of choice is real. I think that's a really good call out. The reference architecture should also prescribe projects to use. I would even say, if you're wanting to do this, not only should you give reference architectures, but reference configuration traps to be careful of. So like when you're configuring these things, like make sure these things are configured this way for security, for compliance, for whatever reason. They should be as prescriptive as possible. I think that I actually think being over prescriptive is good. And this would be my argument for it in these types of things. If you're a person who has to do it some way that's not the prescriptive way, you should know why you have to do it a different way than the prescriptive way. And thus, it's not bad to have the prescriptive way of doing it. It's not hurting anybody. When you're unprescriptive, though, the people that don't know are going to do it in a bad way. And the people that do know are going to do it in a good way anyways. So you might as well be ultra prescriptive. And then the people that know better and have a reason to not do it that way, no. You like the option to switch things out. I just really want those reference architectures to make a choice that's up to the users to override. No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, make it super prescriptive. And then the people that know why they want to switch a piece out or why they want to change a configuration should have a reason for doing it, not just because X, Y, or Z. I agree. I think that's a great call out. All right. 46. Unlike 127, I did both release notes, so I have the stats off of each of these memorized at this point. So 46 versus a 60 from last one. But not all features are the same. Now, one thing that I have been doing, which you'll see in my release notes for 127 and 128, is I'm removing beta. I feel like we talk about beta features, but the problem with talking about beta features is we talked about them in alpha, the one before, and we're going to talk about them again when they reach stable, because you need to know that feature is now stable. And so it feels like we talk about a whole lot of nothing. So my thing is, I'm not going to talk about beta features anymore because it's just the alpha one, unless if I notice that they changed a lot. If something drastic has changed from the alpha to the beta, maybe we'll talk about it. But to me, it seems like I redundantly talk about a bunch of stuff over and over and over again. And even from alpha to GA, we're going to talk about it at least twice. But this allows me to give better coverage of what's coming and what's finally released a little bit better without kind of repeating myself on a lot of stuff. It also will shorten it so that I can expand on those things. So anyways, that's some of the stuff you'll see in the videos that are coming out. Yeah, so I've just kind of been hiding or not I'm not covering the beta. So let's look at alpha. These are the alpha stuff. And another thing I've been doing is I've just been going by SIG. I don't know if that's a good way of doing it. Love to know. Yeah. You'll let me know. All right. So these are all the things alpha. Again, alpha aren't things you should use in production. They are brand new. We had, 20 new alpha things. This is some of the most alpha releases stuff. Honestly, this means that there wasn't as many things that went beta and GA from the previous releases, because alpha is just up there with the other releases as well. But yeah, so we have let's see, we have all of these. Let's look over them. These are from SIG API machinery. We have allow informers for getting a stream of data instead of chunking. So just informers can now stream instead of chunking. I don't think we have to actually check that out. That seems to make pretty good sense. I mean, it's a good feature. We can look at it more if you guys want. But it seems pretty self-explanatory too. CRD validation ratcheting. I'm interested in what they're calling ratcheting here, because there's a couple things that come to mind that they could be doing with their validation ratcheting. I'd like to understand that a little bit. Unknown version I'm piqued. My interest is piqued. Let's talk about it. Consistent reads from cache seems pretty self-explanatory. Back off limits per index for index jobs. Yeah, back off limits per index. This is actually pretty huge, but also pretty self-explanatory. I think this is going to be this is one of the things that job support in Kubernetes has been getting better. And this is one of the things that Nomad, if you did jobs, like if you did like batch jobs and jobs, Nomad has chronically handled this way better than Kubernetes. But Kubernetes has been coming out with things for jobs. So this is just another step in making jobs a little bit more performant and a little bit better of an experience. And this is coming from SIG apps, yeah. Allow for recreation of pods once fully terminated in the job controller. So this is kind of like a oh crap, what have I done? kubectl delete an interactive -I flag, so you can do kubectl delete with an interactive. This is you'll see in Kubernetes 127 they've actually worked on a couple things with the CLI, and this is just kind of adding to it. One of the big features in 127 that we talked about that I've really loved is the addition of a better apply. Basically, you could do you could force delete and recreate of the resources with apply. But it was kind of crappy, and they're working on fixing that and making it better. So I love seeing these types of things that are just really really good quality of life things from the CLI. Really quality of life. Kubeproxy improves ingress connectivity reliability. That's good. I don't know what more to say than improved ingress connectivity reliability. Obviously, we can talk about if you guys are interested in how they are doing that, but yeah. Support user namespaces in pods. Now, this is interesting. I'm going to have to make sure my script for 128 catches this right, because it says it's in staging, but it's saying that it's graduating, because we tracked this in 127 as well. So let's look into this. I want to understand. Interesting. So I haven't recorded 128. I've just written most of the notes down. So this is good. I need to look into this, because it says that it's graduating, but it's been in alpha since 127. So the support for user namespaces is huge, because this has a lot of security implications. Like, as you'll see in my video, the support for user namespaces in pods, and this might actually have, I might have to actually do some like hard digging around into understanding exactly why this is still in alpha. I'm wondering if there was a lot of major changes done to it, but the support for user namespaces in pods is going to do a lot of stuff. So basically what it's allowing you to do is have an elevated user in a pod that is not elevated in the container or on the host system. So basically you can give it elevated permissions inside of the pod that don't exist outside of the pod. This single-handedly solves some of the worst security CVEs in Kubernetes histories, including the Azure one. It was like the Azure. It was named Azure something, where there was basically cross account pod takeovers. It was pretty terrifying, actually. So this is actually a pretty big deal. Now, I don't know why in 127 it was released to alpha, and it says that it's graduating and it's in alpha again. So I'm going to have to dig into that. It doesn't say here that it's going into beta. This is all for alpha stuff. So I'm going to have to go through its history, see what's transpired, and make sure I report on it. But it's a big one, and I've been watching it for it. Sidecar containers. This is something that we can talk exactly. Obviously, there's sidecar containers, but there's a lot of push to make sidecar containers more of an actual thing. So sidecar containers have always been a thing, but it's kind of been like a hidden feature. Sidecar containers are getting much better first first class support in Kubernetes. All right, add support for drop-in kubelet configuration directory. I don't remember off the top of my head. Let's look at what that one is. I don't remember what it is off of just its title. Sometimes I have to get into these. Oh man, I like it when they actually take you just straight to the file, so you can just view the file. Sometimes it depends on who's creating it. All right. Add support for a drop-in configuration directory for the kubelet. This directory can be specified as a... Oh, okay. So this is just... basically, the kubelet was kind of hard-coded where its configuration was, and now you can actually pass in a flag for configuring the kubelet. Not groundbreaking, but definitely useful. Definitely a useful feature to be keeping your eye on. Add CDI devices to the device plugin. So the device plugin API is the API that allows you to get like GPUs, FPGAs, and things like that that are physically attached to your device. That's the API that goes around that. And this is allowing you to have CDA devices exposed through the device API plugin. So that's pretty cool. We are continuing to add cgroups v2 support. So discover cgroup driver from CRI basically is providing better cgroup support to your CRI, which is pretty fantastic. All right, this is another one, dynamic resource allocation. I don't know what's going on here. This was also in, yeah, okay. Interesting. So again, I was going to say, I've done enough of these. I know that this was in alpha from 126. And it's graduating to alpha again. I need to dig into this one as well. I need to understand what's going on. So obviously they made updates for 127, 128. They've made updates, but they're still in alpha. Now, this is where my understanding is a little lacking, but they need to be moving to beta next time or be shut down. So these people are basically, per the CNCF rules, you can't languish in alpha anymore. Can't do it. So that one is one that I have been keeping my eyes on. Dynamic resource allocation is really important. It's basically, dynamic resource allocation is for your, it's like the device plugin API that we were talking about, but it's for things that are outside of the node. So by that, I mean, like, think about your network attached storage and things like that. Allows you to allocate resources off the node that are network attached things. So that's what this dynamic resource allocation is doing. It's basically the device plugin for network attached things that aren't directly attached to the node. So that's why I think it's a pretty big deal. So I'm going to have to dig into that and report on that. Publishing Kubernetes packages. I have just noticed that these ones were graduating to alpha and not net new. I wasn't reading those. I'm glad I did this. I wasn't reading those this type. I was just looking at what stage it was in. I think graduating is an interesting word. I feel like this shouldn't be graduating, but like because it's not graduating to beta, it's staying in alpha. It's not net new either. So it's what is it? It's been held back a grade. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. All right. Add condition for sandbox creation. Yep. Publish Kubernetes packages on community infrastructure. This has been one going on for a little while as well. So basically, they're looking to Kubernetes packages were released on Google's infrastructure, and there's been a lot of work over like the last 2 years to move away from that. Persistent volume, last phase transition time. This one's interesting. This is one you guys definitely wait a second. Where did that go? Where did that go? I missed that tab. All right, this is one everybody should be interested in. Let's open up the KEP here. We want to add a new persistent volume status field, which would hold a timestamp of when a persistent volume last transitioned to a different phase. This is, to me, really a big deal, because it could actually be difficult sometimes to know when a thing happened on a persistent volume, like its status was ready. If its status is ready now, but its status wasn't ready a little bit ago, but how long ago was it not ready? Was it the thing that was causing the problem, or was it not? And has it been ready for the last 3 days, and the issue that you were experienced 20 minutes ago wasn't involved in it at all? You have to go look at logs outside of this that of the persistent volume, and if it was a local disk, it became very difficult at all. So I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's a pretty good move. It's like one of those small things that makes a big difference for the 6 people that have actually experienced the issue. Yeah. So, and support recovery from volume expansion failure. It's a nice touch. It's a nice touch. Let's look at the things that are graduating to stable, to GA. What are the things that we've covered before and are actually hitting stable? There's only 12 things. There's only 12 things this time. That's not very many. All right. First things first, from SIG-Auth, something we've been talking about, user API to get self-user attributes. Pretty cool, pretty awesome. It's allowing introspection of the auth API in Kubernetes, which allows it to be a little bit better. I do talk about this extensively in my Kubernetes 126 video, so if you're wanting to understand a little bit more about that, you can watch that. Yeah. kubectl events is pretty fantastic. So kubectl events, you know what, let's open it up. We can talk about it directly. kubectl events, let's open up that KEP. All right. kubectl's get events has limitations. It cannot be extended to meet the increasing number user needs to support more functionality. Now, this is a thing that you're going to see throughout kubectl. kubectl has been changing a lot to help make unhandleable. So basically, the team behind kubectl can't support everything. So if you have a new CRD, it can't support it. It needs generic ways of doing that. It needs to get more generic, and it needs to allow for more extension cases. Another thing that you're going to see in the Kubernetes 127 and 128 videos is about how they're allowing you to have extensions that actually shadow other commands. And I'm going to show you in those videos on how you can leverage it, what I think is the right way. It's a little bit of a scary thing, but it allows kubectl to be expanded to, like, kubectl create is a great one. kubectl create allows you to create 18 different resources in Kubernetes. But with the ever-expanding different numbers of resources as well as custom resources, it's impossible for the CLI team to support those. So what they've done is made it generic, where kubectl create will allow you to override the thing if there's no thing in kubectl. So if you say kubectl create my special resource, it's going to allow you to write custom code to handle that specific scenario, which is pretty cool. And this is what events is going through as well. This KEP proposes a new command, kubectl events, which will help address the existing issues and enhance the events functionality to accommodate more features. So they're building this new command on kubectl that's going to hopefully eventually replace kubectl get events, and it's going into GA now, which means you're going to, in 128, be able to use kubectl get or events. Pretty awesome. We'll have to give it a shot. Sorry, that was a really long explanation of some of the stuff that's going on in SIG CLI. No. Sorry if that's not what you guys want to cover. Thankfully, these only come around once every 4 months, so you guys only have to listen to these things once every 4 months. But I'd love for you guys to tell me the things that you're excited about here, because it might sway a little bit of what happens in the kubectl 128 or Kubernetes 128 video, if there's something you guys find really interesting. The O of solid. We got an O. We're playing. Anybody got an O? I got an O. All right. So, proxy terminating endpoints. So this is coming from SID Network. Honestly, SIG Network, I have seen quite a bit coming from SID Network. If you look here, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 12 things coming out, and the network is hard. Now, there's definitely some dual stack stuff that we're going to talk about painfully, but a lot of these things is actually painful. SIG Network gets the worst job. SIG, it's a thankless job. Expanding DNS configurations, just making DNS a little bit better, proxying, terminating endpoints, making that a little bit better. These are the ones that I wanted to talk about. Was the cleanup of IP tables chain ownership is going stable. This is going to make your IP tables a little bit cleaner, because Kubernetes has this really bad habit of making the most complicated chain ownerships in IP tables and making your IP tables impossible to read. That's my take on that, and it's getting a lot better. So let's open up this one to talk about it a little bit. Let's open up this one just a little bit to talk about it. Producer Wolf. Hey, it's good to see you. How are you doing? What were you guys working on? Do you know what? Do you know what I didn't do? Oh, wow. That's a long YouTube video. You know what I didn't do? I didn't deploy our new Twitch alerts, which means we don't have raid support yet. But we do have follow alerts. So there you go. There's your follow. Thank you for that follow. Right now, we do usually code through the week, but right now we're covering the news and Kubernetes 128. I know Kubernetes either makes you really mad or really excited, but Kubernetes 128 was released, so we're just finishing up covering the things that were released in Kubernetes 128. And yeah, you know, if you stick around for my other streams throughout the week or on Saturday, I stream Go and Rust code. If you're InfoSec, I'm guessing Python. Python is nice. I called it. I do sometimes, actually, I've been challenged to do a Capture the Flag, so I will be doing Capture the Flag stream one of these weekends. You also like PowerShell. You know, whenever somebody says PowerShell to me, I think like they wrote their own script around Bash. That's like a PowerShell to me. I know that's not. I'm a Linux guy, so I'm a Linux guy now. I used to do Windows, but not anymore. Or PHP. Do you hate life? We can talk if you need help. I have a Discord channel. You can jump on it. That null. Oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about the null logo in the banner. It just makes it look like a template failure. Oh. My entire channel looks like a template failure. I didn't think about that. Every branding thing I've ever done looks like a template failure. More like my life. Yeah. Oh no. I'm gonna have to embrace that. I'm gonna have to, because like, yeah, like I do a whole bunch of template failuring. That's fantastic. Thank you, Russell, for ruining that. I need to work on the UI of it. It's not the greatest. It's not the greatest. We definitely need to work on the UI some. Needs a little animation, needs a little bit of sound. There should be a sound that plays. Also, next time you ever raid me, if you ever raid me, we will have a custom raid message as well. We actually programmed it in. I just need to deploy it now. So, anyhow, let's continue on our merry Kubernetes way. This release is, or this here is basically just an optimization for really large clusters. Like we were talking about with the rest of the IP tables that we've talked about here. IP tables in really large clusters could really suffer. And one of the things is that they made a lot of calls to IP tables restore, and they basically increase the efficiency by calling IP tables restore less. This is something that we do a lot, and I think it's a really good thing. And I like to see this progression. The simple thing is to call IP tables restore too often, because that's the simple thing. It's just then makes it easy that you know that you didn't miss a case. You just call IP tables restore. But then you can go back and you can optimize it. And I think that this is a really great use and an example of don't optimize too early. And so I like this. It was just like, yeah, we looked at it and we could do it. Small code change, but as you'll notice in my video that I release, it's a really great code change. Producer Wolf, you'll have to, if you do a lot of security stuff, you'll have to join me for some Kubernetes security stuff. Or Go and Rust. You can pick my code apart. Yeah. So support third-party device monitoring plugins. So basically this gives you a way, we've talked about the API for device support, and this basically is the thing that's going to let you also monitor those devices so that you can write a custom plugin for your FPGA, your GPU, your whatever that you're attaching, and monitor its health, which is pretty useful. It also, when I say device, it also does storage device, locally attached storage devices. So there's a lot of stuff that's in that. It's a pretty big deal. Another thing from Signode was the graduate kubelet pod resource endpoint to GA, which is just a pod resources endpoint that is going to let your kubelet leverage that a little bit better. Pretty self-explanatory. Although, again, if you guys want to dig into any one of these, just let me know, and I will follow through on it. Extend the pod resources API to report allocatable resources. So this is literally just kind of an extension of this. The two things go hand in hand. Retroactive default storage class assignment. So this is a really, really nice to have. Basically, if you make let's actually open it up, see how they describe it. So I'm not misquoting anything here, but basically if you've made some storage stuff and you want, we intended to change the behavior of default storage class assignment to be retroactive of existing unbound persistent volume claims without any storage class assigned. So basically, the simple way of looking at it is if you made some persistent volume claims without a storage class assigned, it's going to retroactively claim those, which is a really nice thing. Instead of you needing to go and update all of them, I actually really like this. I think that this is going to make persistent volumes a little bit easier to use. And then something we talked about, 126, this was released in 126, was the non-graceful node shutdown. So if you look at the non-graceful node shutdown, basically this has been a lot of work put in. No, 125? Was it 125? 1 second, I need to go. Maybe 125? It might have been 125. 124. 124. It's been a while in the work. It's had a lot of work done on it. And this is, again, why I'm not going to cover everything in beta. You know how many times we covered it in beta? Quite a few times. Quite a few times. But this is really, really fantastic. The fact is that what would happen is if your node shut down because of a power failure or some fault in the hardware or something and crashed, or, you know, even the node was still there, but its network failed, its network switch failed, or the network cable failed, or the NIC card failed, whatever, there was no way to really handle this well in Kubernetes. And basically, or actually, the more common one that this actually focuses on is you go and shut down and restart the node without actually, what is it when you remove a node from the cluster? Why am I blanking on that name? Anyways, whenever you don't do that, I want to say coalesce, but that's not coalesce. My gosh, words fail me. Anyways, quiesce. When you don't quiesce the node, it caused problems. And basically, this adds a lot of support around that. So there's actually been a lot of stuff that has gone up on around getting this there, because there was a lot of different scenarios to happen, but it's finally getting released into beta or into GA, which I'm really excited about, because this is going to make your Kubernetes nodes a little bit more resistant to unplanned failures, to unplanned things happening to it that used to cause problems. If you went and just did a sudo reboot, it used to cause a lot of big problems. And in 128, that's not going to cause big problems anymore. So, awesome. All right. That's it. Let me know how you, do you guys, should I not do these in the news? Should I not do the Kubernetes things in the news? I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. And yeah, that's really it for the news that I have. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you found it informative. I will be releasing videos on each one of these things. I'm not done with the 128 script now, because I got to go over this. I said that I was only doing like net new and things going to stable. And so I'm wondering here on this, when we're looking at the stage of stable, or not stable, but alpha, I probably need to filter out the graduating ones, because these graduating ones aren't actually new. And we've already talked about them. What I need to do is I need to look and see if there was any really large changes. Like if anything really changed a lot between the two. Like, is it just still there because it still needs more work? Or was it because they had to rewrite it? I think that's what I'm going to try to look into for those. Because I didn't realize that was happening. That's my bad. But I mean, that's what, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5. That's 5. It's not a big change. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. I hope you guys like the news. And I will see you guys on Tuesday for a little Golang Eddington work. I think we're going to try to do our CDN, our content delivery network, We're going to try to do a rough pass, a rough go at it. We're going to see how that works. We're going to, we're going to try to make our own CDN. I think that sounds horrifying and terrible and awesome at the same time. Russell, I do need to talk to you about our CDN because I need to understand what's acceptable for a CDN, how you would expect it to work. And everyone, I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you later.